Okay, now we will move on to the second part of our lesson, the last lesson of the last unit, unit 5, the adventures of Ibn Battuta. Right, in the previous section, the previous part, we studied about a small boy who is going to wake up his uncle to listen to his stories of journey. Right, now uncle begins to tell him about his journey, and he begins this way. So the boy writes, I sat down to listen to him. Every time my uncle told his stories, they were different, new, and interesting. Okay, then, the uncle begins. I was born here in Tangier, but of course, you know that. My father and his father before him, which means the grandfather of Uncle Ibn Battuta, were judges. So I learned to be a judge too. When you are a judge, it is easy to travel. You are important, you see. Now he says that my father and my forefather, which means my grandfather, they are all judges, right? Now, so when you are a judge, you are a very important person, and therefore you can simply travel anywhere you want. Okay, so it's easy to travel being a judge because you are important. Yes, the boy says. Yes, I said. Perhaps I can be a judge too one day. Perhaps, he smiled. Uncle Ibn Battuta smiles. My first journey was, he begins his journey. My first journey was a pilgrimage to the holy city of Makkah. So, Makkah, you all know, it's a holy city for all the Muslims. So, for them, according to their rule, once in a lifetime, they should make a visit to Makkah. Okay, so he says, I got on a donkey and said goodbye to my mother and father in Tangier when I was 21. So he was 21 years old when he started as a pilgrimage to Mecca. Right? Right. Now, as he started, his mother cried. Usually, it happens when you go on a journey which doesn't give you a clear destination, clear goal, or the first time you are making a journey alone, usually our parents, they are a bit scared. The same thing happens to Ibn Battuta, right? So after some days journey, I came to the town of Algiers. So Algiers is a kind of city. It's a city in the country called Algeria, right? Now after some days, so he is traveling by donkey, right? He comes to the town of Algeria, and then here I met more pilgrims. So usually there are some towns or cities where usually pilgrims they pass through. So Algiers is a town where all the pilgrims they pass through. So he says, so in that town of Algiers I met some pilgrims, and we traveled to the city of Constantine. I met the rich ruler there. So again, no, so all these people, so Ibn Battuta also meets his fellow pilgrims at the town of Algiers, and then they all travel. Then from there he comes to the, so all that you find here in the map. From that, the city of Constantine is here. So from there he goes to the city of Constantine. So there he meets a ruler. Ruler is a small king around that place. So there he meets a ruler. He looked at my dirty old coat and smiled and gave a beautiful new coat to me. So he is a very important person. Ibn Battuta is a judge like his father and grandfather. Therefore, he was very easily able to meet the ruler of that city of Constantine. And as soon as seeing him, the ruler gives him very good cloth. Okay, so a beautiful new coat to me. Okay, then the boy is asking why. Right, good men help people when they need it. After some days, I left Constantine with the other pilgrims. Right, now the boy is asking, why did he give you? Then he says, good men always they like to help others, when it is necessary, and therefore he says the ruler is a good man, therefore he helped me, giving me with a nice good coat. Right, now he says, after some days of rest at the city of Constantine, I left that city and then started my journey towards the Makkah with other pilgrims. We never stopped moving because we were afraid. So usually when you pass through forests, or when you pass through lonely road, usually you do not stay there because you will never know what you will face there. There may be animals, or there may be dangerous men who will try to rob you. Okay, so he says, no, we never stopped moving because we were afraid. Perhaps people could take our money from us. So the thieves could be anywhere around that place. So people could take our money from us. When we slept, we thought. I was soon ill and I wanted to go to bed and die. Okay, now what happened? Now, since they were moving constantly without stopping anywhere, he became sick. He was soon ill and he wanted to go to bed and die. So, such was the tiredness, such was the illness that he faced. My friends put me on my old donkey and hit the animal from behind to make it go quickly down the road. So what happened? Now he is traveling with other pilgrims. So other pilgrims help him to continue the journey as quick as possible. Then the boy is asking, "Did you want to come home then, uncle?" Usually, when we are sick on the way, or when we are not really able to move forward, we try to take a step backward, right? So the boy is asking, so you faced everything, and therefore did you ever think of coming away? And then, no, he says, of course I wanted to come back, but I journeyed to Tunis is one of the city in Tunisia. Okay, right. A good traveler doesn't stop easily. So he says, of course I wanted to come back because I was so sick, but still I moved on, because a good traveler, according to Uncle Ibn Battuta, would never ever stop that easily. So he says, I left Tunis in a caravan of pilgrims. So caravan is a kind of closed stagecoach. Okay, so in the ancient days, people were moving. If they are going to take a very long journey, they use caravans. So caravan you would have seen. Okay, right. Now he says, I left Tunis in a caravan because he was very sick, and therefore he cannot travel in an open donkey, and therefore he travels by a caravan. They asked me, can you be the judge in our caravan? So there, people who are traveling with him, they are asking him, can you be our judge in this caravan? Then he says, of course, yes. Then a caravan judge, not a bad work for a young man. Okay, now we would never ever heard of a judge in a caravan, no? A judge who is always moving. But now, of course, we all have um, a mobile court. Okay, so a court travels by bus. They stop everywhere. There's a judge, and then there are some lawyers. Okay, so they go to the village by village and they try to solve the problems. It is happening in our country. Okay, so in the time of uncle Ibn Battuta, it is something that is unheard of. Okay, so for the first time he becomes a judge in the caravan. So he says, a caravan judge, not a bad work for a young man, he says. I know, I said quickly. The boy says, that's a big lighthouse from long ago. Did you go up there? So he says, sorry, you see here, when our caravan arrived in Alexandria, I was excited. I wanted to see the famous pharaohs. So what happens now? After from Tunisia, they are traveling in a caravan, and then they go to Alexandria. They reach Alexandria, and Alexandria is one of the cities in Egypt. Very important city, ancient city in Egypt. I was excited means when you see something which you see it for the first time, you get really elated. The kind of happiness that you get on seeing something for the first time, that is excitement. Excited. I wanted to see the famous pharaohs there, he says. So Egypt is known for pharaohs, the ancient civilization. Pharaohs are the rulers of the ancient Egypt. So he says, I wanted to see the famous pharaohs there. I know, quickly. That is a big lighthouse from long ago. Did you go up there? So in Alexandria there is a lighthouse. So the boy is asking, did you ever go to that big lighthouse that you find in Alexandria, famous lighthouse? He says, no. The pharaohs was in ruin. So it is the pharaohs who built the pyramid, right? It is they who came up with a lot of marvelous infrastructure. So he says, now it's not anymore, it's not as glorious as we ever think of, because the pharaohs was in ruins, right? There wasn't a lot to see, but not far from Alexandria, I met a holy man, Burhan al Din. He could see into the future. Okay, right now he has got another experience. He has not seen the pharaohs as he expected, but what he has actually seen is he has come in contact with a very saintly man, holy man called Burhan al Din, and he says he could see into the future, which means he can predict the future, right? And what did he tell me? And uncle is asking, do you know what he told me? Okay, right now he says you are going to visit India and China, and on your travels you are going to meet many old friends. Right now, this holy man Burhan al-Din seemed to have told Uncle Ibn Battuta about his future. So, what was his future? His future is that he will be visiting India and China once, and as he travels to India and China, he would be meeting many old friends. Okay, right. On hearing this prediction, Uncle Ibn Battuta was very happy about this. Okay, so he says, "I am going to go far." I thought, right. And did you go to India and China in the end? The boy asked immediately. Did you go to India and China? Then my uncle says, wait and see, Ahmad. Smiled my uncle. I arrived in Cairo 8 months after I first left home. So after leaving home, almost after 8 months, he reaches Cairo. Cairo is the capital city of Egypt, one of the very important city in Egypt, Cairo, just like Alexandria. He says, I reached Cairo after 8 months of my departure from home. What a big city! Cairo is a very big city. Usually, capital cities are very big. Take example for Raipur. No, very big. It's a cultural center and the commercial center of all the states. Right, right. And what a lot of people, and they never stopped running here and there, day and night. Usually the capital cities are the busiest cities. Okay, we find movement, lots of movement. People come, people go, people want to sell things, people want to buy things, and we always find lot of transactions there. We always find commercial activities there. Everything is busy there. Okay, same thing happens in Cairo. And near Cairo there are the pyramids, big old buildings from the rulers of Egypt long ago. So he also says, I also saw a big pyramid near the Cairo. Okay, so usually the pyramids hold the mummies of the ancient kings, queens, or no great men, and so on. Right. The boy is asking, and were they in ruins? No, not the pyramids. He says, right. He says, no, the pyramids are okay. They are not in ruins. Everything is fine there. Right. Then again he says, next I journeyed up the river Nile. After this we traveled on camels through the hot desert. There were lots of hungry hyenas there, and at night we needed to be very careful. So what happens after Cairo, and they are traveling through the biggest river in the world called Nile. They are traveling through Nile river. So that is only river that is ever flowing river that we find in Africa, the northern part of Africa. Okay. After that river, they begin the desert, the largest desert in the world. So he says, for some time we were traveling through the Nile, and then we started our journey on camels through the hot desert. Usually in the desert we travel by camels, right? So there were a lot of hungry hyenas. So usually in the desert we find lots of animals. Okay, so he says there were hyenas, just like they are like dogs, but they are very ferocious. They eat flesh and so on, right? So since there are hyenas, they have to be very careful at night. Of course, I cried excitedly. One night a big hyena came and took everything from my bag, he said. We soon left the desert. So what happened? One day when they were sleeping in the desert, one hyena came and then took everything that Uncle Ibn Battuta had in his bag. Okay, so then what happened? Then I traveled to this holy city. Soon they left the desert, and then they traveled to the holy city of Jerusalem and visited the famous buildings there. So from Cairo where they go, they travel through Nile and then the desert, and finally they reach Jerusalem, one of the holiest cities for Muslims and for Christians and for Jews. So there he finds visits famous buildings here. Next I went to Damascus. Damascus is a city that is found in Syria. So from Jerusalem he goes to Damascus. What a beautiful city, he says. Then I traveled to Arabia, Saudi Arabia, and visited Medina. Medina is another important holy city just after Mecca. And in the end, I arrived in Mecca. So finally, uncle says, finally, I arrived in Mecca. Okay, right. Then after Mecca, what happens to him? We will see in the next portion, next part.